I'm not gonna lie, I fell asleep. I fell asleep for two reasons. One, I'm tired, y'all. My schedule is kicking my butt. And I was in that movie theater, reclined with a blanket. I set myself up for failure. But in my defense, I went to a 6:30 viewing of this film. Okay. But number two, this movie is a slow dripping faucet. This movie is paint drying. It's very slow. Now, if you know me well enough, you know I enjoy a slow, like, grind that thing. Like, however, I'm not sure if there's enough going on to account for being in that theater for more than 2 hours. So let's talk about what the movie isn't about. If you're going to this film with the expectation that this is Io's story, spoiler, it isn't. Io's character is supposedly sexually abused by her professor. That is her claim. Io is the impetus for why we are in this moment with Julia Roberts' character, Alma. So it's less about whether this thing happened to her or not, and more about what it is to be in the middle, receiving pressure from both sides, and how she handles it, how it boils over, and how it changes her life. Julia Roberts' character is holding on to something herself that this story allows her to say out loud to her husband. But it is a very slow burn. So I fell asleep, I don't know for how long, but it was in the second act during what I like to call the trial and error, which is the moments where the character is trying to reach their goal and complications are getting in the way of that. I wake up once we get closer to the midpoint, and I would say the midpoint of the film is Alma's crash out, when things come boiling up and tumbling down for her. But I missed why, because I was asleep. And to be honest with you, it didn't feel like I missed anything. And I couldn't track back what might have happened. So just do with that what you're going to do. When the crash out happens, the pace picks up a little bit. And I'm thinking, oh, we're in the climax. We slow right on back down. And there's a point in the film where I'm actually saying to myself, where is this going? Like, what are we waiting for and on? What more could there be? So what this movie is actually about, which you can tell if you've watched the longer trailers, is that connection or disconnection between Gen X and Gen Z, and how Gen X has taken on every struggle, every battle with armor, and therefore assumes every generation behind them should do the same. And if you're paying attention, Gen Zers are not about that life. Gen Zers feel all their feelings. They seek to be heard. They seek to live in a life of comfort, and they seek to be understood at all costs above anything, including their careers, their education, etc., etc. And so we are watching a clash of these ideas because of sexual abuse, right? Now, what I like about this story is oftentimes we are worried about telling the same story in the exact same way. And this is an example of flipping an idea on its head. Instead of telling this story from the point of view of the victim and knowing if what she's saying is true or not, we're telling the story from someone in proximity to her who does not know what happened and who is friends with the accused and the accuser. That's a different point of view. So if you are writing something and you're trying to figure out, how can I tell this in a unique way? Think about ways that you can flip it on its head. Who else has a perspective of this story? Since this isn't Io's character, Maggie's story, we don't know what happened. Now, the professor who supposedly did this to her is an asshole. He's terribly unlikable, but that doesn't mean he did it. Now, there are other points in the film that show us different kinds of evidence of how he treats other people, but that still doesn't say he did it to her. None of us were there. None of us know. And in all honesty, this is the part that I don't like, but maybe it was intentional. I don't care. I am so not in Maggie's shoes that I care as a woman. I care as a person who is empathetic. I don't care as a person who's watching a movie who is rooting for someone. In all honesty, I'm not rooting for any of these people. Now, that part is probably not intentional. I'm not rooting for the accused professor. I'm not rooting for the accuser, who is Maggie, who is a Black woman. And I'm definitely not rooting for Alma, Julia Roberts' character. I am not invested in any of them. I don't feel connected to any of them, which is probably another reason why the film feels so long and so drawn out. It's like, are you going to come to a conclusion? Because you're going back and forth kind of with the same dialogue, kind of about the same issue for 2 hours. And then the end, which I'm not mad at because I don't mind an end that doesn't have a nice little bow tied on it. I'm that kind of person. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But if you've seen it, or if you intend to see it, I would have ended it at Alma's confession. I wouldn't have even done that last scene with Alma and Maggie together. I was actually in there like, ooh, are they going to end it right now? Because then that really leaves me wondering who's right, who's wrong, who forgave, who didn't, who was ruined by it all, who wasn't. Those are the things that make this story interesting. All of those questions. And not to say that those questions were answered in the very last scene, but they gave a more solid conclusion than I felt the story needed, because the entire time I was watching it, I was kind of bouncing around with like what ideas I resonated with. So in the end, I didn't need something to like have full closure. So if the professional pen received the script, assuming the script is anything like what I just saw as a produced film, because that does not always equal the same thing. Okay. It is a totally different product by the time it makes it to the screen. But if I were to receive the script exactly how it was, I'm going to assume that it reads faster. But let's just say the characters exist exactly how they exist. I would probably give it a needs development, because I'm not invested in anyone and I'm not rooting for anyone. I don't care about anyone. And because of that, I'm very, very emotionally detached. The ironic part about all of this is I'm emotionally detached from what's happening on the screen. And Alma is a philosophy professor. Therefore, Maggie is getting her degree, her PhD in philosophy. And some of the other conversations they're having is about how to talk about things on a philosophical level versus a literal level, how to not make things so personal and everything be about you. So maybe it's intentional that I'm not emotionally connected to any of these people. But because I'm not, then I find their emotions to be temper tantrums. You know, it's like, yes, this man's entire career is gone based on what this young lady said, which we don't know is true or not true. But him being angry about it just looks like a temper tantrum. I literally said out loud to myself, and they call women the emotional ones, when he was freaking out, you know? And I don't like that feeling as a moviegoer. I like to be able to side with someone, even if I'm siding with the bad guy. Sometimes that's fun to be like, oh, I relate to the bad guy, right? But in this film, I didn't relate to anybody. Did you guys see it? How'd you feel about it? Happy writing.
And that's it. Want more content? Like, subscribe, and for notifications. Get notes on your script that get you unstuck at www.theprofessionalpen.com. I'm out.